Life in Rosewood Heights was a mix of charm and chaos. The HOA, of course, was the chaotic part. They had rules for everything: how high your grass could grow, what colors you could paint your door, and even how many potted plants you could have on your porch. Most of the time, I ignored their pettiness, but when Karen became HOA president, things took a dramatic turn. Karen was the type who took the title president a little too seriously. With her oversized sunglasses and clipboard permanently glued to her hand, she strutted through the neighborhood like a queen surveying her kingdom. At first, she stuck to minor annoyances, sending warning letters for unapproved garden gnomes, and threatening fines for parking a truck in the driveway for more than 30 minutes. But her obsession reached new heights when she introduced the idea of the master key. "This is for emergencies only," she announced at the monthly HOA meeting, holding up a shiny silver key. "Every HOA board member will have one to ensure the safety and security of our community." The idea was absurd. A universal key that could open every house in the neighborhood? No one with an ounce of common sense would agree to that. "Let me get this straight," I said, raising my hand. "You want us to hand over access to our homes for the sake of safety? How exactly is that supposed to work?" Karen gave me a tight-lipped smile. "This is about trust, Mr. Miller. As your elected representative, I have your best interests at heart." "Yeah, right," I muttered under my breath. I wasn't the only one who refused to participate. Many of my neighbors flat out rejected the idea, but Karen wasn't one to back down easily. She started pressuring residents, showing up uninvited to their homes to discuss the benefits of the program. When she came to my door, I was ready for her. "Good afternoon, Mr. Miller," she chirped, holding her clipboard like it was a weapon. "Karen," I said, blocking the doorway, "if you're here about the master key, save your breath. It's not happening." She sighed dramatically. "I really hoped you'd be more cooperative. This is about protecting your family." "My family's protected just fine," I said, glancing toward the security camera mounted above my porch. Her eyes narrowed. "Suit yourself. But don't come crying to me when there's an emergency and we can't help." I closed the door before she could say another word. Weeks went by and I thought Karen had finally dropped the master key nonsense, until one Thursday morning. I had taken the day off work to fix a leaky faucet when I heard someone jiggling my front door handle. Frowning, I checked the security camera feed. There she was, Karen, standing on my porch with the infamous master key in her hand. I opened the door just enough to glare at her. "Karen, what the hell are you doing?" She jumped back, clearly startled. "Oh, I was just, testing the key. Making sure it works properly in case of an emergency." "You mean breaking into my house?" I snapped. "Don't be so dramatic," she said, waving me off. "It's perfectly legal. I'm the HOA president." "No, Karen," I said firmly. "It's not legal. And if you don't leave, I'm calling the police." Her smug demeanor faltered, but she quickly recovered. "Go ahead. I'm sure they'll agree with me." Challenge accepted. I dialed 911 and within minutes a patrol car pulled up. But when the officer stepped out, Karen's face turned an interesting shade of pale. It wasn't just any officer. It was my son Ryan. Ryan had recently started working as a dispatcher and sometimes assisted with patrols in our area. He strode up the driveway, his uniform crisp and his expression unreadable. "Dad?" he said, glancing between me and Karen. "What's going on here?" Before I could answer, Karen jumped in. "Officer, thank goodness you're here. This man is being completely unreasonable. I was just performing my duties as HOA president when he started threatening me." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Your duties involve trying to open his door without permission?" Karen stammered, her confidence wavering. "It's not like that. I have a master key for emergencies. It's part of our HOA regulations." Ryan nodded slowly, then turned to me. "Dad, do you want to press charges?" Karen gasped. "What? This is ridiculous. You can't arrest me for doing my job." Ryan looked back at her, his tone calm but firm. "Actually, I can. What you're doing falls under attempted unlawful entry. And if my dad wants to press charges, I'll have to take you in." Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. She clearly hadn't expected this turn of events. "I'll just go," she mumbled, retreating down the driveway. "That's what I thought," Ryan said, giving me a small smirk. As she disappeared down the street, I couldn't help but laugh. Karen had no idea that the one person she called to enforce her nonsense was the last person who'd ever side with her. And something told me this wasn't the last we'd see of her antics. "You said." After the master key debacle, Karen had been strangely quiet. Too quiet. Most neighbors would have welcomed the peace, but I knew better. Karen wasn't one to admit defeat, She was the kind who plotted in silence, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. A week later, the neighborhood group chat erupted with a flurry of messages. Karen tried to fine me for having an unapproved garden hose. She said my car was an eyesore and threatened to tow it. It's a brand new car. Can she really demand a house inspection? Her harassment had reached a new level, but instead of caving in, the neighbors rallied together. A few even joked about starting an anti-Karen HOA, complete with free barbecue nights and zero arbitrary fines. Still, Karen seemed undeterred. Then came the day she made her biggest mistake yet. It was a sunny Saturday morning, and I had just finished mowing the lawn when I heard a knock on the door. Emma, my wife, opened it to find Karen standing there with her clipboard and a scowl. "I need to inspect your home," Karen announced. Emma blinked. "Inspect it? For what?" Karen didn't flinch. "We've had reports of unauthorized renovations. It's my duty to ensure compliance with HOA guidelines." Emma crossed her arms, clearly unimpressed. "We haven't made any renovations. And even if we had, you wouldn't have the authority to inspect anything." Karen's face darkened. "If you refuse, I'll have no choice but to escalate this matter to law enforcement." "Go ahead," Emma said with a shrug. "But you're not setting foot in my house." Karen huffed and marched off, her heels clicking dramatically against the pavement. About 20 minutes later, the sound of sirens broke the calm. A police car pulled up, lights flashing. I stepped onto the porch, confused, just as Karen appeared at the end of my driveway, frantically waving the officers down. She spoke to them with animated gestures, pointing repeatedly at our house. After a few minutes, one of the officers nodded and approached the porch while Karen stood behind him, smirking. "Good morning," the officer said, tipping his hat. "We received a call about a dispute. Can I ask what's going on?" Emma stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "Karen here thinks she has the right to inspect our home. We told her no. Now she's wasting your time with false reports." Karen interrupted, her voice shrill. "It's not false. They're hiding something. As HOA president, I have every right to ensure compliance." The officer sighed and pinched the bridge of his nose. "Ma'am, being HOA president doesn't give you the right to enter someone's home without their permission." Karen looked stunned. But. The officer held up a hand. "Let me be clear. If you attempt to force entry again, you could be charged with trespassing." Karen's smirk disappeared, replaced with a flush of embarrassment. "This is ridiculous," she muttered. "You're supposed to be on my side." "Oh, Karen," Emma said with a laugh. "You called 911 over this? You should have done your homework." Karen glared at her. "And why's that?" Emma grinned. "Because my son works dispatch. Guess who sent the officers here?" Karen's eyes widened as she realized her mistake. The officer glanced at her, clearly unimpressed. "Ma'am, I suggest you leave these folks alone and focus on actual HOA duties. Have a good day." Karen stormed off, her heels clicking furiously against the pavement, muttering something about incompetent officers and ungrateful residents. That evening, Ryan called to check in. "Did Karen really call the cops on you?" he asked, laughing. "Yep," I replied. "And she got quite the surprise when she realized who sent them." Ryan chuckled. "Next time, tell her to save herself the trouble and call a locksmith instead." "Will do," I said, shaking my head. As much as we enjoyed the brief victory, I had a feeling Karen wasn't done yet. This was just the beginning of her unraveling, and I had no doubt her next move would be even more outrageous. "You said." Karen's retreat was short-lived. A few days later, I spotted her patrolling the neighborhood with her infamous clipboard and a sour expression that suggested she was plotting something big. Sure enough, it wasn't long before her next scheme unfolded. It began innocently enough. I was in the garage tinkering with my toolbox when Emma called out, "Hey, did you change the locks?" "No, why?" I replied, wiping grease off my hands. She held up an envelope with the HOA logo on it. "Karen sent us a notice. She's demanding that all houses install HOA-approved locks, effective immediately." I snatched the letter, incredulous. "She can't enforce this." "Oh, she thinks she can," Emma said, smirking. "And she's even offering to install them herself, for a fee, of course." I sighed, shaking my head. "Let me guess, this is just another way for her to push that stupid master key." "You bet," Emma replied. "And I'm sure she's already started with the people who won't fight back." We didn't have to wait long for confirmation. Later that evening, a neighbor, Mr. Henderson, showed up at our doorstep. "You won't believe what Karen just did," he said, clearly agitated. "What now?" I asked, ushering him inside. She showed up with some locksmith, said she was here to upgrade my locks for community safety. Before I knew it, they'd swapped out my front door lock and handed me a bill for $200. You didn't agree to this, did you? Emma asked. Of course not, Henderson exclaimed. But she wouldn't leave until I paid. Said it was a mandatory HOA expense. Emma frowned. That's illegal. You think she cares? Henderson said, throwing his hands up. She's drunk on power. What can we do? Emma and I exchanged a glance. Don't worry, she said with a determined look. We'll handle it. Karen's house call. The next morning I was sipping my coffee when I heard a knock at the door. Through the peephole, I saw Karen standing there with a burly man in tow holding a toolbox. Here we go, I thought, opening the door just enough to lean against the frame. Karen, I greeted her dryly. What can I do for you? I'm here to install your new HOA-compliant lock, she said, her tone oozing with faux authority. Not interested, I replied. This isn't optional, she snapped. If you refuse, I'll have no choice but to fine you and revoke your HOA privileges. Revoking my privileges? I said with a laugh. Oh no, how will I survive without access to the community flower beds? Karen's face flushed with anger. Mock me all you want, Mr. Miller, but these locks are for everyone's safety. Now step aside. I didn't move. Karen, let me make this simple. You're not installing anything on my property. If you try, I'll have you arrested for trespassing and vandalism. Clear? Her eyes narrowed. You wouldn't dare. Try me, I said, pointing to the security camera above the door. Karen glared at me for a long moment before turning on her heel and stomping off, muttering about ungrateful residents. The turning point. That evening, Emma decided it was time to turn the tables. She suggested we host a neighborhood meeting at our house to discuss Karen's antics. Word spread quickly, and by 7 p.m., our living room was packed with frustrated residents. She fined me for using the wrong shade of white for my fence, one neighbor exclaimed. She tried to tow my car for being too old, another added. The stories piled up, each one more ridiculous than the last. That's it, Emma said, raising her voice over the chatter. Karen's gone too far. If she wants to play dictator, we'll show her what happens when a community fights back. What do you have in mind? Someone asked. Emma smiled, her eyes gleaming with determination. It's time for Karen to learn that the HOA works for us, not the other way around. The room buzzed with excitement as Emma outlined her plan. It was bold, risky, and absolutely perfect. As the meeting wrapped up, I couldn't help but feel a mix of anticipation and unease. Karen had made it clear she wouldn't back down without a fight, but she had no idea what was coming her way. The stage was set, and the real showdown was about to begin. You said. The morning of the emergency HOA meeting was buzzing with tension. Karen arrived dressed in her usual power outfit, clipboard in hand, and an expression that dared anyone to challenge her. The clubhouse was packed. Neighbors who had long grown tired of her reign filled every seat, while others stood along the walls. Karen must have sensed the shift in the room, but she pressed on, attempting to control the narrative. As president of this HOA, I have always acted in the best interest of this community, she began, her voice ringing with forced authority. These accusations are baseless and slanderous. From my spot in the back, I could see neighbors exchanging skeptical glances. Emma stood calmly in the center of the room, holding a thick folder filled with evidence that we had spent weeks gathering. When Karen finished her speech, Emma stepped forward. Karen, she said, her tone measured but firm, we've tolerated your overreach for far too long. Unauthorized lock changes, illegal fines, harassment, and misuse of HOA funds, it's all documented here. And we're done letting you get away with it. Karen's face turned red. This is outrageous. You have no proof of any wrongdoing. Emma opened the folder and began reading aloud. Emails detailing her threats, invoices showing the overcharges for the lock changes, and even a signed statement from the locksmith himself. The room fell silent except for the sound of papers shuffling as Emma continued. When she finished, she looked up at the crowd. We've collected enough signatures to call for a vote of no confidence, she announced. Everyone who's had enough of Karen's dictatorship, raise your hand. Hands shot up across the room. Karen looked around in disbelief, her mouth opening and closing as if searching for words to stop the inevitable. But it was too late. The vote was unanimous. Karen was officially removed as HOA president, effective immediately. Karen's fury boiled over. You can't do this. I am the HOA president. You'll regret this. But her threats rang hollow. Neighbors ignored her as they began discussing plans for electing a new, fair leadership. Karen stormed out, her heels clicking furiously against the tiled floor. The fallout didn't end there. The locksmith who had worked with Karen came forward, admitting she had coerced him into the lock change scheme and that she had been pocketing a cut of the fees. The police got involved and soon Karen was facing fraud and embezzlement charges. With Karen gone, the neighborhood began to heal. The new HOA leadership prioritized community well-being, abolishing unnecessary fines and focusing on actual improvements. Relationships among neighbors strengthened, and the sense of camaraderie that had been missing for so long returned. One evening, as Emma and I relaxed on the porch, sipping lemonade, the peace of our revitalized neighborhood felt more profound than ever. Ryan joined us, laughing about how Karen had unwittingly called the wrong family to enforce her schemes. "You think she'll ever learn her lesson?" I asked Emma, watching the sun dip below the horizon.